that we engage these issues, and also about their families and the extended family. The next day, we actually came back to Bethlehem. This is our second trip in to do specifically the interview with Pauline and some of the family as well. One of the first things we did was sit down the entire family and have Madeline, who's Pauline's sister-in-law, who was really my main contact in the family because of her English ability. And she's actually a teacher in the local, in Bethlehem at the Latin Patriarch School. And she introduced the family.
I am Madeline. I am the sister-in-law for Murtar Rami. And here's my husband. He's the big brother for Rami. And here my son. Then for the left hand, Pauline, the wife of Rami. And her big son, George. And the small one, Wissam, he's sleeping. And here there is Sama, small one. She's in the house. Here, Rana, the sister of Rami, and her son, Fadi, and her husband in the house. Here, Rula, the small sister for Rami, and the mother of the family. And here, the small brother for Rami, Ramzi, and his wife, Judith, and the son, Majd.
But to go through and say, this is the family. Here they are. Here's the Ayad family.
In the last weeks, we contact with Jordan, with emails, with the phones and calls, and we just waited for phoning him to know everything work with it. And the last 2 days, when he works to go out Pauline from Gaza, we contact together, and we just waited him to say anything for us. And when Pauline, they asked her to leave Gaza now, Jordan called me and he wanted to know everything going with Pauline, and he phoned me for many times, and I feel him as one of us. He wants to know everything going with Pauline. And just I phone him, then he phoned me and phoned Pauline to know everything. Last week when he know that Pauline can't leave Gaza, in that time they put for her, I feel him as a nervous man. He spoke, I want to come to Israel and I want to see what happened with Pauline. But when Pauline leave Gaza, he was very happy and calmed down, is nervous. And we are contact together last 2 days. And we're happy to see him here in Bethlehem. And thanks him what he do for us.
And then I sat down with Pauline. Now, I'd asked Madeline before, and I said, listen, I'm very comfortable with talking to you about what happened to Rami. And if we can't talk about that with Pauline, we understand that. She may not be comfortable talking about what had happened to her husband. It's only a year, a couple months, 14 months before. So it's not something that happened a long time before. And Madeline said, no problem. And when I sat down to interview Pauline, she actually said through the translator, are you going to ask me questions, or do you just want me to tell the whole story? So she was prepared. She knew to start in point one. And if you look at the interview, really, you don't need my questions. She takes it all the way through, from his kidnapping, the phone call she got where she did not know he had been kidnapped but knew something was wrong, to when they found his body the next morning. Last Christmas, you were able to get a pass to leave Gaza to come to Bethlehem in the West Bank for Christmas. But while most of Rami's family here stayed in Bethlehem, you had to return to Gaza because you were pregnant and had to have your child with the doctors and the hospital that you had gone to, so you could not stay. You had to return back to Gaza, back to the place where Rami was killed.
أنا كنت أرجع عشان أنا كنت حامل وكنت بدي أولد، وكان صعب علي إني أنا أولد وبعيدة عن أهلي ومع أولادي الصغار.
Were you frightened when you knew that you had to return, not just to the place where Rami was killed, but to Hamas-controlled Gaza, a place that you knew was hostile to Christians, a place you were returning to with 2 small boys while you were pregnant with a girl?
أنا ما كنتش خايفة، كنت مسلمة كل حياتي بين إيدين الرب، وبعرف إنه الرب أمين معي ومع أولادي. اللي صار مع رامي الله سمح في وجوده. اللي صار مع رامي هذا شيء كتير عظيم، وأنا كتير فخورة فيه. يعني شخص يضحي بحياته عشان ما ينكرش إيمانه بالرب يسوع، هذا يعني بالنسبة لي وللأولاد فخر. هذه القوة اللي أنا أخذتها عشان أرجع فيها على غزة. الرب كان حيحميني أنا وأولادي، وأنا كنت واثقة من هذا الشيء كتير.
You knew there were times when you were in Gaza where the children were being threatened.
هو كانت بالنسبة لي كان قبل هيك في جماعة كانوا بدهم يجوا زي كأنهم يتبنوا الأولاد. يعني هي الست جاتني هي منقبة، وقالت لي إنه في شيخ بده يجي يزورك على البيت. أنا الموضوع ده بالنسبة كتير قلقني كتير.
This is when we started working together about 2 months ago. And then of course about the experience of working with us and getting across the border that day. This is a border crossing. But she knew it too, that the next day was destroyed with rockets, missiles, firing from both sides, because kind of a no man's land. So Hamas was firing rockets into it. Israel had to fire rockets back. This doesn't exist anymore.
قبل ما أحكي عن الإجراءات بدي أحكي إنه كانت دايما صلاتي تقول يا رب فلتكن مشيئتك في حياتي في خروجي يعني من غزة.
And she takes everyone through the story too of working with the groups and not being able to get out.
أكثر من مرة حاولت جهات كثير أنها تطلعني من غزة بتصاريح، بس كان كله على الفاضي. كل مرة كان الرب يغلق الأبواب. نشكر الرب سمح إن أنا أطلع من غزة بطريقة كان هو عن طريق المحامي جوردان. كان هو اللي ماسك القضية كلها، وقدرت أطلع يوم الجمعة 26/12 الساعة 2 الظهر من غزة.
And finally, I just want to say that it is great to see you here in person, as we've been spending the last few months on cell phones and through text messaging, doing everything possible to make sure you and the children were here in Bethlehem with the rest of the family, and it is great to finally see you in person here.
وأنا كمان.
We almost thought about going back the next day, but we had enough close calls that it was, and we gotten what we needed done. We needed to regroup and finish up Pauline's matter, which we did. And then we flew back to the United States, flew into Atlanta. And then we would watch TV and wonder if this was a different war they were talking about. Because they're talking about Israeli aggression. And I'll never forget, you watch CNN and Christiane Amanpour and all of these reporters talking about Israeli aggression. I was standing in cities that were being rocketed by Hamas. I mean, for all I know, they're aiming at us. I mean, they're indiscriminate, but the rockets were landing near us. So, you know, who's the aggressor? Now, Israel, you don't have proportional response. You can't round it. The Israelis are not going to send out a makeshift rocket. They're going to knock out the problem, and that's what they've done, and they've continued to do, and that's going to be the only way to deal with terrorists. You cannot deal with terrorists proportionately, which is this UN concept of proportionality. It doesn't work when you're fighting a terrorist.
There are Christians everywhere, and there are Christians who need help everywhere. And I know at the end of the day that even when we may be focusing on these Christians, that our focus here, and we have a very specific focus, but the ripples go through the whole continent, the whole country we're operating in, and for everyone who's persecuted there. If you're persecuted because of your race, or you're persecuted because of your sex, or you're persecuted because of your religion, and it's not even Christianity, and it's a smaller group. Our victories for the Christians that we represent help those who may have no faith at all who are persecuted, or who practice a different kind of faith, for women who are mistreated, for minorities. And so we know what our focus is, but we are looking to expand this into a new global effort, and into continents which we have not touched before.
The fact is that we couldn't have done what we did on short notice, taking 5 people over to Israel. These are expensive operations. This Special Operations Unit, these are expensive operations. You're moving, you've got security, you've got staff, hotels, airfare, no notice. You're not booking these tickets in advance. But it was the generosity of, what I saw was the phenomenal generosity of our members from around the globe that enabled us to do that. It was unbelievable.